This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Coveil. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. If Netscape didn't go public in 1995 to start this whole revolution of online communication, online commerce, where the hell would we all be? Maybe some of you out there would still have a job working for the man, but I sure as hell would not. Registering my first domain name in 1996, first website in 1996. This stuff changed me. Watching commerce from the inception, seeing how things work, making millions and millions of dollars via connecting with people online. This has been my life. So I always love to hear the story of someone else running in a parallel life, doing the same damn thing. Not the exact same damn thing, but going down this twisty, curvy, nonlinear path to get to success online. My guest today is Mike Jackness, and he is the consummate online entrepreneur. You name it, he's been involved. And he has a great perspective for all of us on how to first think about the problem of online commerce and how to execute. He's got the scars on his back to show, and he's gained the experience that we can all learn from. Again, anyone that's gone down a kind of parallel path to me and has made a bloody fortune, I want to talk to them. I want to learn from them. And that's exactly what I get to do on this podcast. Without further delay, let me jump right into my guest today, Mike Jackness. Mike, I was thinking in advance of this call, I had an experience back in the late 1990s, and I want to share it with you because I think it's relevant to your experience, or at least it connects us in some kind of way that's tangential and maybe even more directly. If I have to search back into my memory, I made my first dollar online as a solo entrepreneur in 1997. That really dates me, right? But, the interesting thing was I got some capital pretty quickly and I started searching around for other things, which was not the best idea. I should have just been focused on what I was doing. But there was a GQ magazine that came out in that late 90s time period. I want to say 1998. There was two guys on the front cover with a Costa Rican attorney. They were talking about how much damn money they were making in online gaming down in Costa Rica. So me and a couple enterprising buddies, we headed on down there. We spent several trips going back and forth to Costa Rica, dealing with an attorney. I actually wasted $10,000 on office space in Costa Rica at that particular point in time. The reason I never got involved is because I started poking around. And when I started poking around down in Costa Rica, I started to realize, there's a lot of Italian guys down here. This was in the late 90s. There's a lot of Italian guys down here. And I'm not picking on Italian guys by any stretch of the imagination, but I sort of felt like I was around the Gambinos at that point in time. I said, I'm just going to let them have this business. I got a few dirty looks about who's this guy trying to get involved in the gaming business. And of course, all the legalities and stuff started to mushroom not too far after that. You were in this area at this certain point in time, weren't you?
I was, but it was a little bit different. We were affiliate marketers, so we weren't actually running the poker rooms. For the most part, we didn't really have a contentious relationship with the poker rooms because we weren't competing against the ones that were down there. And there weren't the legalities that you were talking about because we were, from a technical standpoint and a legal standpoint, that I consulted with several lawyers about just to make sure that we weren't pushing the envelope anywhere. We were just a marketing agency or an advertising agency. So we were no more at risk than a magazine that was taking ads from these guys or running commercials on the air about them. We were in pretty good shape from that perspective. And what I didn't realize when I first got into online poker was that ultimately, like, all the stereotypes of things you were talking about were the reasons that I eventually wanted to get out, because I really didn't associate with the people very well. It's just something I didn't really realize as I was getting into it because I personally enjoyed poker so much. I mean, it was something that I was super passionate about. So I kind of had blinders onto that to start with and didn't really think maybe these stereotypes are here for a reason. But it took several years for me to kind of wise up to that and want to do something different.
Were you on the ground in Costa Rica physically?
We didn't start there. We started doing online poker affiliate marketing in January of 2004. We ended up moving down there in the fall of 2006. Basically, the main reasons I wanted to move there were some people that were down there on the ground, and we had become friends with a couple of them. People that worked in the affiliate part of their business that we had become friends with, not the owners themselves. There were some tax advantages to move down there, like legitimate tax breaks you can get by being a U.S. citizen living abroad. There's $100,000-ish, $90,000-ish exemption on the first $90,000-ish dollars of income. And then we were legitimately running a business offshore and spending time out of the United States. So there were, even though you still pay tax on your worldwide income, there were some pretty significant tax breaks that we were able to get by being down there. And we also were able to hire people cheaper. So at a certain point, when we did move down there in 2006, and I lived down there till 2009.
I mean, I've heard some bits and pieces here. I've heard a few anecdotes here and there, but you go down there, this was quite successful, right?
I mean, that was the main reason to drive us down there. We were doing very well. I mean, we had a couple of embarrassingly large years on our tax returns. I mean, we were doing very well. It feels awkward to even talk about because I didn't feel like we put the effort in. Some of it's luck and certainly part of it was hard work, but we did quite well, and it pushed us to want to move down there. The bad luck part was we were down there for just a couple of weeks, and this law passed called the UIGEA, the Unlawful Gaming Enforcement Act. It didn't make it illegal to play poker in the United States, but it made it illegal for the transactions to be processed, which effectively squashed it because they knew as they passed this law, if they made it illegal to play poker, that would come under consideration from the WTO and some other interstate commerce things. So they made it illegal for financial institutions to process payments and definitely made a significant challenge for our business. And it was definitely one of these things where we were also still at the right place at the right time because a lot of the companies that were based in the US at the time were really scared of what the future might bring because the law passed. This is a typical US poop show when it comes to Congress. They passed this law, but they didn't write the law. They just basically had a placeholder for the law. No one knew exactly what was going to come of it. So we actually ended up doing several deals with other companies to take their websites and run them with no money down and just give them an earnout. We were able to shift our business from not only just doing our thing, but also inheriting a couple other businesses and running them as well. And yeah, I mean, it was definitely a pretty crazy and very lucrative time, but it was also a period of what I called running a business on quicksand, because like every time we thought we were kind of ahead of the curve, the next shoe would drop. NetTeller, for instance, which was the PayPal-ish of the online gaming industry, pulled out of the US. And then there were some other things that happened. And the ultimate finale of it all was the US government seized 3 of the major poker rooms on one day. And I guess it was 2010 or 11. I forgot exactly what year it even was now. I was already out of it by that point, but it was just like one hit after another kept on happening. And it was not the type of environment that I really enjoyed operating in.
Now, eventually, though, your experience down there, it wasn't just a matter of getting out. It ended up going very negatively south business-wise for you, right?
Like I said, each one of these things that kind of happened just reduced our earnings potential for the business. And we had a big overhead, and I'm very much a people person. It's I think the hardest things in business is dealing with the people aspect as your business is shrinking or declining in some way and having to make the tough decisions, which I've never been good at. I mean, I think that most entrepreneurs struggle with this. You end up with expenses that way outpace your income for large periods of time if your business is declining. Yeah, it was definitely a period of struggle for us through those years for sure.
You know, the thing I remember about Costa Rica, and I'll end it on this, is that beyond even the business side of things, that place, San Jose, I never even went to the beach stuff. I was just in that city, and that place was just crazy. If I think back, and I'm not going to even mention any detail, but if I think back to probably things that took place there, I mean, I think anybody that spends any significant time in San Jose, and maybe it's cleaned up its act, but boy, you can get in trouble there really, really fast.
two aspects to this. I mean, first of all, I was married when I went down there, so luckily that kept me out of that. I feel very fortunate. I mean, there's definitely a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of stuff. Let's just kind of put it that way. That happens down there, and I feel very fortunate that I was already attached to somebody and mostly stayed away from that stuff. Not mostly, just completely stay away from that stuff. I was at some parties and some things where I was kind of ancillarily kind of attached to it, but I stayed away. I saw all of it happening, but I was lucky enough to be able to stay away. And I say lucky because I am definitely a very compulsive type person. Whatever I do, I like to do it right, whether it's drinking or gambling or running my business or going for some crazy hike or whatever it is. I tend to do it right or do it excessively. And I'm pretty fortunate that I was able to stay away from that. And in addition to those types of things, in Costa Rica, still, San Jose specifically, third world country. The reasons we end up wanting to leave there was some crime and some stuff that happened. One of our friends actually got murdered, which was really, really sad. And that was actually the final straw for us. And we just picked up and left a few weeks after that and just kind of had enough. But besides even that stuff, it was the bureaucracy and just trying to get things done down there when you're used to dealing with an American business and lifestyle. It definitely wore on me. And by the time we got through our third year down there, I was ready to get the heck out.
I recently announced, just as a final Costa Rica point, I recently announced online to my friends that I will never ship a package to Costa Rica again after dealing with FedEx and trying to ship there. I was like, you got to be kidding me. It was the biggest boondoggle ever. The only country I've ever said that about. I will never ship to Costa Rica again for my services. Forget it.
It's funny. Our address was something like from the old cemetery in Escazú, go 300 meters and make a left, and then go 600 meters and make a right. And I always used to ask people, like, how do you know exactly where 600 meters is? And they would say, well, either you count telephone poles or you'll put something in the address, like make a right at the broken down red Honda Civic. And it's like, well, if that Honda Civic moves, it's like, oh, it's been there for a couple of years. Don't worry about it. It's like,
as I say that, I'm not trying to be a jerk because I know there's a lot of success down there, a lot of very wealthy people, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, let me keep you at a point though of your skill set, because at this point in time, what are you kind of calling yourself? I mean, how you're doing affiliate marketing, but how was this skill set developed? Or were you just always one of these entrepreneurial guys who's like, okay, the internet's hitting, I want to get involved, I can do this? I mean, what was your process to kind of get your feet wet in making money online?
I've always been an entrepreneur, to answer the first part of the question. I started my first business right out of high school, but I was doing computer consulting. I was always a tech guy. And for quite a while, I was doing my own thing. And then eventually one of my clients hired me. So I did corporate stuff for 7 years until I went back on my own. I was making money on the side doing eBay. I had some skill sets doing stuff on eBay. I was a power seller on eBay. This is in the late 90s and early 2000s. Just happened to be one day playing online poker at Party Poker and saw affiliates on their website and put it all together. So I had the technical skill set to understand the internet was obviously going to be big, that online poker was going to be big. The whole thing took off like wildfire. So it was a combination, I said, like of hard work and persistence of an entrepreneur is always tinkering with something. And a lot of times you'll tinker with something that doesn't work. You'll tinker with another thing that doesn't work. And then you'll tinker with something that hits. And I think the really successful entrepreneurs are able to identify that and then jump in with 2 feet and go full steam ahead. And that was definitely where we found ourselves in 2004.
Poker stuff goes south. Now, I assume you've got a few bucks left from this venture. I mean, you didn't lose everything. So now you pivot. You're saying, okay, I'm entrepreneur forever. I'm going to be doing something online. What were some of those steps when you leave? Because I can really relate to the whole Costa Rica experience. But what were some of the pivot steps that you made in terms of saying, okay, what's next? How did you start to piece that together? What was the inspiration?
We were definitely not in a situation where we lost everything, quote unquote, leaving online poker. I mean, we did very well. I am very lucky that this was not my first soiree with money and having done well. Like when I had first made some money when I was younger, I did the typical American thing. I spent it all quicker than I made it. So when this rolled around as we were making money, the first thing I did was pay off my car and all my credit cards and then my house and then start putting money in the bank. And when we left online poker, we were doing well. I mean, we were kind of semi-retired. I was very burnt out.
How old were you at the time?
in my early 30s.
Early 30s, so you're semi-retired. You saved more than a few bucks at that point in time.
We did. Yeah. I mean, we did well. I mean, like I said, we spent some money, along the way, but never crazy, never, all my peers, the other guys that were in online gaming, the guys I said like I wanted to just try to stay away from, and I'm glad I again was married and just didn't get caught up in that. They were spending the money quicker than they could make it, and ultimately ended up stealing money from poker players and the online bank account balances that were supposed to be segregated. They just had this insatiable appetite to spend money, even though we were, I think, living very well. We were definitely better than the average American, certainly better than the average Costa Rican. We still had a propensity to want to save. So we definitely came out in pretty decent shape. And again, I was really burnt out. I mean, it was a long 7 years in that space. When we came back to the US, we bought an RV and just traveled around for a couple of years. While we were doing that, I realized that being retired was not going to work because I was getting bored very quickly.
Hold on, driving around in an RV was not fulfilling you intellectually?
It was definitely cool. It was awesome. It was definitely awesome.
You reached a point you can only do so much of it.
I wasn't over it. It's kind of ironic. We come full circle. We actually just bought another RV recently, which is kind of funny. We can get into that in a little bit, but I really liked it. It wasn't a matter of I was sitting there saying, I can't deal with this anymore. I don't like RVing. The quiet times at night are what got me in trouble. You get in the camp and you're out, it's dark now and you've already done all your hiking and cooking and there's not a lot to do in the evenings. I'm not really a big TV watcher. So my mind would start to wander and I'd start to do other things. And that eventually indirectly led us to what we're doing now, which is e-commerce. It's been really fulfilling, what I've been doing since then. And the thing that we're really working on now is trying to get a good balance of doing business stuff and fulfilling the personal stuff that I enjoy doing.
Before I dive into getting some of your expertise from e-commerce, because let's face it, everybody wants to know, at least us entrepreneurs, we want to know, gosh, what can this guy that's been down this path for 20 plus years, what can he teach me? What can I learn from him? I must share with you, though, one last little poker vignette. In 2007, I was doing a documentary film, and it was about the financial crisis. But I wanted to interview poker players specifically just because it kind of connected with the whole thought process for the markets, at least for my particular trading strategy. I was on a ferry coming back from Macau, China to Hong Kong airport. I just happened to pay the extra $5 to get on the business class second level. And I noticed a couple guys, again, back to the Gambino thing, a couple guys in all black that they were talking to a guy who was dressed casually. And the guy who was dressed casually, I heard him say that he was the head of poker programming for ESPN. We get in line. I didn't get a chance to talk to him on the ferry. We get in line at the Hong Kong airport and I run up to him and I say, hey, I heard you do such and such and such. He's like, who the hell are you? I was like, oh, I wrote this book. He goes, oh, I read that book. And he goes, well, how can I help you? And I said, I need some interviews. And I say, who can you do for me? And he's like, Howard Lederer and Jesus, Chris Ferguson. I ended up interviewing both of those guys in Vegas. They were great interviews. That was, however, before they had some bad things happen. But I really enjoyed that whole process of getting a chance. Also, Anthony, I can't say his last name, the magician, who's had quite a career since then. But really enjoyed talking to all those guys and learning from them. It was just really interesting stuff.
Well, Chris and Howard owe me a few $100,000. So if you talk to them next time, let them know that.
Hey, hold on, it's been 12 years. So I brought it up for that very intention, as I figured, a guy like you was probably going to be somewhat ambivalent there.
We were caught up in the middle of that mess, and I appreciate the stab wound in between the ribs there. That one hurt.
It does suck because, guys like that really did have something interesting to say. And the business part of it, hey, that's a whole different thing. It's a long time ago. We'll leave it there. E-commerce. You make the pivot and you're there now. You're fully in it. And, my friend Dave said, hey, you got to talk to Mike. When you think about e-commerce today, you don't wake up and say, oh my gosh, I've got this personal passion about one particular product and I must do that. How are you looking at the landscape? I have a sneaky suspicion it's more about you don't really care about the particular product. You want to find certain things that meet your criteria, then apply your formula. Am I going down your headspace?
Yeah, that's very fair. But I've always been jealous of the other guy, and I think they're probably jealous of me. So I think the grass is always greener.
I'm jealous of you. Yes. I want to explain your thought process. I mean, you're sitting down with yourself and you're going to tell the secrets of Mike to yourself about how you approach the next opportunity in e-commerce.
It's interesting because it's always building blocks upon everything that you learn along the way. Starting in 2019 and thinking to 2020 and beyond, what's the best type of e-commerce site to get into? It's hard to check off every single checkbox all the time. In general, I think you want things that are relatively light and easy to ship. Big, heavy stuff gets to be a logistical nightmare, as we've learned over the years. Things that don't have a shelf life. So if you make a wrong decision, you don't have a ticking time bomb in your hands. That's very important, in my opinion. You want things that people have a personal passion about. We've done both, things that are just boring products, which you can still make a lot of money off of. But in general, it's easier to market and sell things that people are going to want to talk about and they're excited about. I use two of our brand examples to compare against when it comes to this, which is Ice Wraps, which is one of our brands that we sell hot and cold gel packs for different parts of your body to heal them. No one's ever going to tell their friends, oh my God, I put this thing in the freezer and it got cold. How revolutionary is this? It's just a boring product versus the brand that we just sold, Color It, very passionate audience, people that are into coloring as an adult, and they're going to want to share their drawings. You get lots of user-generated content out of it. They want to tell their friends. They're excited about it. I think that's really important. Another thing that's really important is a direct Facebook audience or social media audience. In the instance, again, of Ice Wraps, you can't target somebody on social media or on Facebook specifically with advertising, someone who's in pain, because that's just not a targetable thing. But you can target someone who likes coloring books or adult coloring or coloring as an adult, any of these types of things. Those audiences exist. So I think it's very important to have that leg up. Another thing I think that's really important is being able to create content, because I think that being able to write content and get attention, get traffic, get eyeballs is a differentiator moving forward.
What kind of content are you talking about and deployed where?
On your own blog, on your own website. So the type of written content or video content of things that people are naturally going to be searching for. So in the case of coloring, it would be how to blend and shade with colored pencils, how to sharpen colored pencils, how to color with markers, what are the best colored pencils, how to color a mandala, things of this nature, things that are very, very question-based a lot of times, I think are the best ways to put it. It's easy to rank for things that are question-based, that you can answer the question, and those questions are directly related to selling stuff. We were very successful in writing this type of content and working with our community on that. So those are things I think are really important. Another thing that's really important is being able to sell the same customer more than one thing. It's very expensive to acquire a customer in any business, whether it's informational or physical products. If you can sell that same customer that you've already developed a relationship with another widget, whether it's the same widget or a different one, it becomes significantly easier because you already have their email address, you have their trust, you have their loyalty, you have their excitement in your brand and products, hopefully. It makes it significantly easier to sell them something else. This is something else that we really look for in our products or things that we're looking to do moving forward.
Coloring books. You've just laid out a guy who's in the poker affiliate business, and you pull in enough cash to say, okay, it's time to kind of kick back and retire in your early 30s. And you shift into coloring books. Not exactly a shift there, but it's one of your projects you've been involved in selling. How the hell did that happen?
Yeah. It wasn't a straight line. Like a lot of things, like I said, it's building blocks. So the very first e-commerce site that we started was treadmill.com. And the way that we got into that, when I got out of online poker, because I had this background in affiliate marketing and SEO and things of this nature, I got into domain investing, and I still do that to this day and still develop a lot of the things that I buy. I got into this kick of buying 5 and 6 figure domain names. And one of those, again, was treadmill.com. We bought also the other ones that were e-commerce properties. We bought cuttingboard.com, icewraps.com, which the one we do now was another one of those along the way. It wasn't all a straight line in terms of how we got on the coloring, but the first thing we did was treadmill.com. The lesson we learned there was don't do big, heavy, expensive pieces of equipment. It's really difficult to sell them. Even if you're on treadmill.com, it's still really difficult. Then we got onto cuttingboard.com and then icewraps.com. And the lessons we kind of learned there were, well, don't just sell other people's products. You want to make your own products, which we did eventually for both ice wraps and cutting board. But the next step was actually Color It, which was the coloring brand that we made. That was one that we made from absolute scratch, from nothing, and had a 7-figure exit earlier this year for. The way that actually happened was it was my cousin's idea. I had gone to visit my grandmother, which I went and did twice a year. And I was talking to my cousin about this online selling space, especially on Amazon. I'm like, you got to get into this. It's amazing. But I don't have time to help you and I certainly don't want to partner with you. She kept on calling me with all these different ideas that she had. And one day she calls me with the idea of adult coloring books. And I was like, you know what? Actually, that's something I really want to do, because I had been looking for the next thing that met all these criteria.
But had you ever heard of this? I've never heard of this.
I had not, but I knew about it immediately. Like, I knew immediately when she told me, within 2 minutes, I knew that this was something I wanted to do. It was really that quick.
You knew there was a passionate group out there. Even if you didn't know about it, you all of a sudden knew there was this passionate group of like, oh my gosh, okay, this group is serious passion.
The way that I knew within 2 minutes, I typed into Google Trends, adult coloring books, and it was like up and to the right. I knew immediately all the other things I just called out. These were going to be light, easy to ship products. They weren't going to have a shelf life. They weren't going to need to be refreshed every single year. They're not going to have next year's model gel pen and all these different things to have to worry about like we did in treadmill space. People are going to be passionate. We're going to sell them more of the same thing. As they use their pencils, they're going to buy more of the same pencils. They color their book. They need more books. Like I knew there was an interest on Facebook. I knew it was a slam dunk the second I heard it. And those are hard to come by. It isn't like you have to check off all these things to be successful in e-commerce, but you put yourself in a significant advantage over everybody else and over every other niche if you can have all these criteria met in your business. And those were the things that I was thinking about, because there's always opportunity. You can drown yourself in opportunity, and there's way more things out there than you'll ever be able to accomplish as a single person or a single company. So why not cherry pick the things that you know are going to put you in the best advantage? And relating to online poker, it's like, why not put your money all in when you know that you're ahead? You may not always win, but you know you're ahead. You know you're statistically in the lead. That was why I wanted to make sure that we met all these criteria, and boy, did it work.
This world that I'm in, these trading books that I've put together, this trading world, the concept is quite simple. The concept is you start January 1st, whatever year, I'm picking a hypothetical date. You don't know what the hell market is going to take off that year. But you are ready, long or short, to go any way with whatever. So if you start year one, January 1st, say, I don't know what's going to happen this year, whatever market. Okay, oil takes off. Now you're long oil. Stocks take off. You're long stocks. You don't have any idea. It's just a momentum play. In many ways, that's what you're saying. You've got the flexibility of mindset to say, hey, I'm not wedded to whatever it is necessarily. I'm wedded to my process.
But there is one thing that I've added to the list now, which is to be personally interested and passionate about the products. I do think it makes it a lot easier. I've tried to apply that process moving forward. We're going to be doing a couple new things this year and moving forward that are something that I would actually use. I think that makes it a lot easier. It helps you develop better products, helps you keep you passionate through times where you're a little bit bored, helps you be the face of the brand and be able to write your own content and do some things that I've had to rely on other people to help with up to this point. There's some things that I'm working on that I have a personal interest in that I'll be working on that meet all those other criteria that I also have an interest in. So it's not just about the money and the business aspect, but it has a little bit more to offer to me intellectually in a rewarding way.
I want to jump into launches in a second, but you bring up so many interesting things. It's been part of my life. I just have to share back at probably 96 to 98, I acquired a lot of domain names. I mean, crazy things from pregnancytest.com to ulcer.com, ovulation.com. But I happened to acquire depends.com too, the adult diaper. People are going to laugh, but here's the funny thing about it. You'll appreciate this with your background. The trademark is on the word depend, no S.
Interesting.
But it's colloquial known as depends.com. For at least 7 years, Kimberly Clark would send me a letter every year from their corporate counsel making an offer. And it would go up every year from like $100 to $200 to $300. It was ridiculous. I saved all these letters. It was just crazy, right? And then one day I'm like, okay, I'll just put it on that auction site, Sea-Doo. And I put it on the auction site. and I had no idea who won the auction for like $25,000. It was Kimberly Clark.
Nice.
But
At least they probably made you a good offer.
yeah, exactly. But they didn't want to do it directly. But it was one of those things. I was just flexible, and ended up making $250,000 plus on selling domain names. But it was never part of my business. It was just something that eyes wide open. What's going on? Take advantage of the opportunity right now. So, anyways, just sharing back to you. You've said so many similar experiences. Hey, let's talk about launches. This is something near and dear to me. I've worked with a large newsletter publishing operation, and I really learned, probably the largest one, and I've really learned how they do launches. And it's really amazing to watch the launch process. How do you do launches, and how do you approach the process? In the financial newsletter industry world, it's kind of like, well, we'll do a launch, and if we get 3 to 4% response, we're doing great. That's a home run. How do you approach launches for your particular products?
We really honed this down to a science over the last few years, and it took us a while to kind of figure this out. But there's a combination of, in our world, of having to deal with Amazon, because Amazon's such a big player in the e-commerce space, and then obviously our own website. So for a brand like Color it was really, really important for us to be able to rank for keywords on Amazon, because something like 50% of all purchases made online are now happening on Amazon. It's kind of crazy how much market share they've gained. So if you don't rank for keywords that are generic that people are looking for, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. So a great example of this would be something like gel pens, which we ranked on the first page for gel pens for our coloring brand, which was crazy because it's one of the most competitive and highly searched things on Amazon. We were able to do that because we had such a big audience off Amazon. So we had this huge advantage that most people just weren't able to take advantage of. The way that we did our launches was very much because of the Amazon platform, and we had to keep that in mind. So Amazon doesn't want to see like this massive spike on one day. They want to see some consistent sales over a period of time, and they love seeing outside traffic. So that's exactly what we would do. We would one day send an email out to a part of our list saying our new product's available on Amazon, go buy it. Then the next day we would send out a part of our Facebook Messenger subscribers over there. Another day we run a bunch of Facebook advertising heading over to a landing page, and then we would send it to another portion of our email list. We had hundreds of thousands of people on our various lists, and we would break this up in a pretty systematic way over a period of a couple of weeks and mostly send the traffic to Amazon during that period. Once we kind of got some traction on Amazon, we would change the links on our landing pages and our emails to go to our own site and let our new baby over at Amazon kind of sail on its own, and then work on getting as many sales as we could through our own website as well. So it was very much dependent on that, because we knew the long-term economics of being able to rank for something like gel pens on Amazon, realizing that, again, about half the people are starting their search on Amazon, and if they're typing in gel pens, they're going to buy a set of gel pens, no matter what. They're never going to hear about you, period, if you aren't on that platform and ranking there. They're not going to go search on Google. They're not going to go find you on Colorite.com. We had to make sure that we took that into consideration when we were launching products. So it was a little bit of an interesting tap dance for us. It was very unique to our business, but that was pretty much how we handled the product launches.
You had to be aware, and obviously you are, of the pull, the power that Amazon has. You almost sound like a trader breaking up a big block order so people don't try to front run you and stuff, kind of knowing what Amazon expects. But then you ultimately do want to, in a perfect world, you still want to be like the old time e-commerce guy where it's like, you really don't mind people coming to your website. You really would prefer them to buy through you and not give Amazon their cut, and you'll ship it out, whatever. You really would prefer that in a perfect world, but it sounds like to me you're saying, hey, this is the big guy in the block. We got to deal with him.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And you start to look at the world through a different set of lenses and realize that how important that economy is over on Amazon to your business, and that ecosystem is over there to your business. And you can't leave half the market on the table, just by saying, I don't want Amazon to have those sales, even though, yes, it's better when a customer buys directly from you, no doubt. If you can, in a vacuum, make that decision, can I have the customer on my website on Amazon, I'd rather have them come to my website because then they're my customer and I have their email address and I'm allowed to communicate with them directly. Where Amazon does not give you their email address. And in fact, it's against terms of service to communicate with the customer for any reason whatsoever that isn't related directly to that order that they just placed. So, that puts you at a disadvantage. But again, if you also think big picture and realize there's somebody every few minutes typing in gel pens on Amazon, and they're going to buy some set of gel pens off of Amazon at that exact moment in time, if you don't want to walk away from that business, you better make that a part of your equation. And that's how we had to deal with it.
I didn't crunch the numbers like you probably would have advised me to do, but when I had the audio book rights for 4 of my books, Amazon owns Audible. So it was like they give you a choice. They say, okay, if you let Audible be the exclusive, you're going to get 40%. If Audible's not exclusive, you get 25%. I said to myself, come on, give them the exclusive because they dominate. What am I going to do? That's the name of the game, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, the bully often does win. It's until one day they don't. Until one day the guy that's getting beat up retaliates and fights back. But for the most part, for a long period of time, the unfortunate thing is the bully wins, and Amazon is that bully right now. And boy, do they act like it. They definitely have their thumb on top of hundreds of thousands of sellers just like us, and it does not feel great a lot of times. But it's also, what are you going to do? We still make so much money from that platform, even though they've made life pretty miserable for us in a lot of ways. You just can't ignore it. And at some point, you have to realize your place in the world and the way that the system is, and you can't fight City Hall. So we look at them as a channel. We look at ourselves as a brand. We want to have a presence on that channel. And if Amazon has a fall from grace, well, we're just a brand that's willing to sell on any channel and do sell on other channels. But Amazon's still the largest marketplace. And if you're Apple or Nike or Adidas or any company, you want to have a presence on Amazon because you want people that have Prime and trust Amazon and want that 2-day shipping and want to order from that interface to be able to buy your products. Even the largest companies still are selling their products through that platform because they do have kind of a chokehold. Where that's going to go and what's to come is another whole story, because I do think that Amazon is going to have a fall from grace at some point in the future. But that's another whole conversation.
Yeah, I've seen the headlines. And again, it's a whole other conversation. Just the headlines actually this morning, the trust busting, the monopoly busting, the headlines are everywhere. And I must say, as an author who's had books on Amazon since 2004, you can appreciate this too. People might think listening to us we're whining, but if anybody really understood what the review process is on Amazon, there is absolutely nothing about it that's fair. Whatever fair means, it's a really seedy process, is my humble opinion.
I agree. And I can go off on a rant of all rants, but I'm going to try to bite my tongue because I'm sure we have more interesting thing to talk about. It's awful. And I think your assessment's dead on.
It's difficult. Let me shift you into something that I saw in your world, which I would be curious about because I always want to acquire new people interested in my world. For lack of a better term right now, we will call those people leads. Yes, that's what people like Mike and Mike, this Mike and you, Mike, we call you. It's a lead. That's the reality. But what are some of the great ways that you have attracted leads over the years? The one thing that I saw, which really piqued my interest, and I would love for you to explain it because I don't know the details.
There's definitely multiple ways to get people interested in giving you a lead. Just backing up a second of why you would want to go through all this mess rather than just hit someone over the head and try to sell them something. When you try to hit someone over the head and try to sell them something, you have a very small window in time to do that. You're doing it from a position of uncomfortableness, for lack of a better word. The person you're trying to sell to is guarded. They're probably irritated by your buy messaging. If you aren't able to actually convert the sale at that moment in time, you've probably lost them forever. Or you might have an opportunity with some remarketing ads in this day and age to try again for a short period of time. But for the most part, thinking of things on a longer time frame, it's a very short moment in time. Versus a lead where you get their email address or their Facebook Messenger subscription or have them pixeled in some way so you can send them other advertising. you can now shift this time frame to something on a much longer scale. Instead of trying to just be the dirty sales guy, you can now be someone who wants to develop a relationship with somebody over time. For me, that just fits my personality way better. I'm not a good sales guy by nature. I only want someone's money and want someone to buy from me if they really want to. And if they aren't happy, I'm going to give them their money back no matter what. And no matter what it is that I'm selling. If you can develop this relationship with someone over time by giving them a bunch of value up front, it makes this sales stuff way easier because now you've given them a whole bunch of free things over a period of time, developed a relationship with them, continue to give them more stuff, develop a bigger relationship with them. Eventually, because of frequency of exposure to your brand, when they're ready, they'll think of you. They'll buy from you because you've already developed that trust. And you switch the mindset from this person being guarded and being like, leave me the hell alone, to their wallet's out and they just want to give you money because they already have a relationship with you. This works not only in e-commerce, but we also have some e-commerce training and courses and a podcast, and it works really well with the informational space as well. I mean, we have the exact same model. Contests are one of those ways to just get someone on your list and get them hooked and start developing that relationship. But it's just one of many ways, because the thing that I think that's important is to always have multiple angles to go try to capture leads for, because different offers appeal to different sets of people. So there's always going to be the freebie hunter audience out there that is really excited for your contest or your giveaway. And there's always going to be the other type of audience that's out there that's looking for information or for free downloads or something along those lines. We have several different offers at all times that accomplish this, and including things like a free plus shipping offer, free digital content, or depending on what it is, there's a wide variety of this. But the whole idea, the overarching idea, is to develop a relationship with somebody, just like you would want to in real life. I mean, you don't walk up to somebody in a crowd and just start asking them for money. Unless you're a jerkwad, you want to develop a relationship with them first, and then it becomes easy.
Two of my favorite emails of the last 15 years, two random people, unrelated, at different points in time, wrote me and said, I've been following your world, listening to your podcast, whatever, your blog. And they both said, for 8 years, and I finally decided to buy.
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. So if you've been giving people value over that entire time, and sometimes it does take that long. And so I think that the good thing about doing this is it's kind of like an avalanche or a snowball rolling down the hill, except it's in your favor. You don't want to avalanche rolling at you when it's snow, but I mean, when it's building relationships with people, you just continue to build more and more equity over time. And eventually it can take 8 years, but this stuff is definitely cumulative. And I see it with everything that we do. If you just continue to provide value and apply constant pressure and just constantly do this over a period of time, every year it gets easier and easier. Now it feels great because we're in this hockey stick growth phase with that type of stuff, because we've been investing in it for so long. And most people give up way too early because they're not willing to put in the hard work and actually provide value to people for that long.
Where are the best ways to keep in touch with your leads? I think you've mentioned a couple: Facebook, Amazon, other ways that you keep connected to your leads.
Email marketing for sure is still number one for us. 52% of our revenue on Call Rate came from email, which is crazy to think about. A large portion of our revenue from Ecom Crew comes from email.
How do you acquire your emails?
Through these leads, through these lead offers. For the most part, once someone becomes a customer, we have their email. But for the most part, we're out there trying to get leads. And all of our top of funnel marketing and advertising starts with leads. We don't do any top of funnel ads at all anymore for purchases. It's always for a lead. So we're the first thing we ever send out to the ecosystem or the ecosphere out there in any way, shape, or form is always about, how can we help you? Here's this free thing that we can give you to make your life better. That's the basis for every ad that we run, for everything that we do. Yes, we do obviously eventually try to sell those people something, but it all starts with that concept in mind. And that's a really easy way to get an email address.
Do you do anything on Instagram right now?
Not really. We haven't had a lot of luck with Instagram with our brands, but Instagram's a great platform. It's not that I'm knocking it in any way. It's just that in general, using stereotypes and just statistics, Instagram skews to be a much younger market and Facebook is the older market. For the brands that we've been running, they're typically the older market, the coloring brand, for instance, and a tactical brand that we have. These are older market type people, and we don't really have stuff that appeals to millennials.
LinkedIn, Twitter.
LinkedIn's definitely not something that we've worked on at all because, again, we're doing coloring books. It's not really a business related thing. It's certainly something we can go after for Ecom Crew, for the informational and business side, but we haven't. Twitter, we haven't found much luck with either. That's one thing that it's a tough platform to get advertising to work on because it's so short lived. I mean, tweets have a very short lifespan in terms of usefulness and how far down someone's feed they're going to go. We haven't really had good luck with Twitter personally.
When am I going to meet you? Our mutual friend has been trying to set this up. So when are we going to be in the same place? When are you coming to Asia? When am I coming to the States? We'll have to figure that out. I'm not looking for an answer right now. I'm just saying we got to catch up and have a dinner somewhere.
Are you in Hong Kong or?
I'm in Saigon right now.
Saigon, okay. I will be in Vietnam in January, so we can shoot for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mike, is there a place that you would like to send people? Where would you like to direct people to find out more about you, what you're up to, what they can learn from you about perhaps making their own business hum a little bit better?
Most of these times when I'm interviewing for this type of stuff, I always like to direct people to Ecom Crew, which is our podcast and blog and courses and all that stuff about e-commerce. So it's ecomcrew.com, Ecom Crew on iTunes, Ecom Crew on all the social feeds. If you want to contact me directly, it's support@ecomcrew.com. You'll find there's about 250 plus episodes as of recording this of the podcast, a ton of really valuable blog information, written information. There's some free mini courses. All the stuff I talked about is there. And again, the whole idea is to just overwhelm people with amazing, valuable, free content and develop that relationship with them. Eventually, a lot of times what ends up happening over the course of many, many months or sometimes years, they'll eventually sign up for one of our premium courses or something. But the reality is that even the premium courses, everything is available pretty much on our website for free anyway. It just the premium stuff puts things in a compact step-by-step process, makes it a little bit easier. Plus, we give unlimited email support. There's our community and webinars. So we try to add rich content over and above all the things you can find on our blog. But that concept, and the reason I'm kind of getting into it was not to be salesy with this, but that concept works with everything. And it's amazing how well it works. And if you're genuine and willing to help people in your niche, in your industry, and be selfless, which is the actual reason I started, I really didn't think about it from a monetary standpoint. The reality is that eventually that's what happens. And if you focus on helping other people and being good for the community, eventually the money part will come instead of focusing on that first. And that's kind of our story these days, is to focus on that.
Yeah, I can't disagree. That's been my experience. Do something good. If people like you, they talk about you. You can't control that necessarily. There's a certain virality to it. There's a lot of things you do that you are very systematic about, of course, but there still is just, if you just do good stuff, there's probably going to be some karma in the long run.
I think so. I mean, I think overall, that's the way that it works. I mean, sometimes bad people have great things happen to them, and sometimes great people have bad things happen to them. But overall, usually good people, like, good things follow them.
Mike, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. I could really get granular and pick your mind, and maybe we'll do that on a second call one time, but I just wanted to kind of catch up and let people experience your perspective.
We can do that second one in person in Asia.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.